Good Thursday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for April the 20th. Today we are reading together in Numbers chapter 14, which is going to be the follow-up to what took place at our reading yesterday, where the scouts were sent into the promised land. They went on this long trip, 500-ish miles possibly. Took them 40 days to do so. They returned and were able to speak to the abundance and the greatness of the land. And yet 10 of the spies decided that, yeah, it's great, but it's not for us. It's not for us because there's no way that we'll be able to take this land. There's no way that we'll be able to actually take possession of it to overcome those who are already within the lands. We might as well just give up. Now, Caleb stands up at the end of chapter 13 and says, no, we can do this. We've got this. Let's go up now and take possession of the land because we can certainly conquer it. The other 10 stand up and they bow their backs. They say, no, we can't. This is a land that devours its inhabitants. We even saw the Nephilim there. This land, and they will eat us up like we're grasshoppers. To us, we seem like grasshoppers when looking at them, and certainly as they looked at us, they saw us as grasshoppers too. So how are the people as a whole going to respond to these two differing testimonies? That's what we're going to see here in chapter 14 today. Let me get the text up on the screen for us, and we'll read along together. Numbers chapter 14, in verse number 1, then the whole community broke into loud cries, and the people wept all night. All the Israelites complained about Moses and Aaron, and the whole community told them, if only we had died in the land of Egypt, or if only we had died in this wilderness. Why is Yahweh bringing us into this land to die by the sword? Our wives and children will become plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? So they said to one another, let's appoint a leader and go back to Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron fell face down in front of the whole assembly of the Israelite community. Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, who were among those who scouted out the land, tore their clothes and said to the entire Israelite community, the land we passed through and explored is an extremely good land. If Yahweh is pleased with us, he will bring us into the land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and give it to us. Only don't rebel against Yahweh, and don't be afraid of the people of the land, for we will devour them. Their protection has been removed from them, and Yahweh is with us. Don't be afraid of them. While the whole community threatened to stone them, the glory of Yahweh appeared to all the Israelites at the tent of meeting. And Yahweh said to Moses, verse number 11 of Numbers 14, how long will these people despise me? How long will they not trust in me, despite all the signs I performed among them? I will strike them with a plague and destroy them. Then I will make you into a greater and mightier nation than they are. But Moses replied to Yahweh, the Egyptians will hear about it. For by your strength you brought up this people from them. They will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that you, Yahweh, are among these people, how you, Yahweh, are seen face to face, how your cloud stands over them, and how you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. If you kill this people with a single blow, the nations that have heard of your fame will declare, since Yahweh wasn't able to bring this people into the land he swore to give to them, he has slaughtered them in the wilderness. So now may my Lord's power be magnified, just as you have spoken. Yahweh is slow to anger and abounding in faithful love, forgiving iniquity and rebellion, but he will not leave the guilty unpunished, bringing the consequences of the father's iniquity on the children to the third and fourth generation. Please pardon the iniquity of this people in keeping with the greatness of your faithful love, just as you have forgiven them from Egypt until now. Yahweh responded, I have pardoned them as you requested. Yet, as I live, and as the whole earth is filled with Yahweh's glory, none of the men who have seen my glory and the signs I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tested me these 10 times, and did not obey me, will ever see the land I swore to give to their ancestors. None of those who have despised me will see it. But since my servant Caleb has a different spirit, and has remained loyal to me. I will bring him into the land where he has gone, and his descendants will inherit it. Since the Amalekites and Canaanites are living in the lowlands, turn back tomorrow and head for the wilderness in the direction of the Red Sea. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, how long must I endure this evil community that keeps complaining about me? I have heard the Israelites complain that they made against me. Tell them, as I live, this is Yahweh's declaration, I will do to you exactly as I heard you say. Your corpses will fall in the wilderness. All of you who are registered in the census, the entire number of you 20 years old or more, because you have complained against me. I swear that none of you will enter the land I promised to settle you in, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, son of Nun. I will bring your children whom you say would become plunder into the land you rejected, and they will enjoy it. But as for you, your corpses will fall in the wilderness. Your children will be shepherds in the wilderness for 40 years and bear the penalty for your acts of unfaithfulness until all your corpses lie scattered in the wilderness. You will bear the consequences of your iniquities 40 years based on the number of the 40 days that you scouted the land, a year for each day. You will know my displeasure. I, Yahweh, have spoken. I swear that I will do this to the entire community that has conspired against me, that will come to an end in the wilderness, and there they will die. Verse 36, of the men Moses sent to scout out the land, and who returned who returned and incited the entire community to complain about him by spreading a negative report about the land. Those men who spread the negative report about the land were struck down by Yahweh. Only Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, remained alive of those men who went to scout out the lands. When Moses reported these words to all the Israelites, the people were overcome with grief. They got up early the next morning and went up the ridge to the hill country, saying, let's go to the place Yahweh promised, for we were wrong. But Moses responded, why are you going against Yahweh's command? It won't succeed. Don't go, because Yahweh is not among you, and you will be defeated by your enemies. The Amalekites and Canaanites are right in front of you, and you will fall by the sword. Yahweh won't be with you, since you have turned from following him. But they dared go up the ridge of the hill country, even though the ark of Yahweh's covenant and Moses did not leave the camp. Then the Amalekites and Canaanites who lived in that part of the hill country came down, attacked them, and routed them as far as Hormah. And that is Numbers chapter 14. All right, looking at this text, here's the consequences of the lack of faithfulness shown by these scouts who were supposedly leaders among their ancestral tribes. Because of their lack of faith in God's ability to lead them into this great land, well, this unfaithfulness becomes contagious, and the whole community goes along with their assessment of the situation, as opposed to Caleb, and we're going to see here in chapter 14 Joshua's assessment of the situation. Basically, what we have in verses 1 through 4 is they try to undo the Exodus. They try to undo the Exodus. They try to appoint a new leader that's going to take them back to Egypt. Now, of course, this is the second coup that they've had against Moses as a whole. Remember, Aaron and Miriam also stood up against Moses previously, and we're going to see in a couple of chapters that Korah is going to do the same thing as well. But notice Moses and Aaron's response, not just theirs, but also Caleb and Joshua. They all either fall down and fall face down before the community, or they tear their clothes. These are all behaviors that would be given in the face of death. So someone has died that you care about, you would express your grief in this way. So maybe this is some ironic foreshadowing where that's exactly what is going to happen to this whole community. They are going to die because of their unfaithfulness. And yet we see Joshua and Caleb try to encourage them to not go all the way, that they need to really think about the way they're behaving right now so that they can make a quick turnaround, so they can repent quickly and go back the way they need to go. But unfortunately, the community as a whole doesn't want to go along with them. In fact, they pick up stones to get ready to stone them, which is again quite interesting. It again is ironic that they see Caleb and Joshua basically as being those who are bearing false witness, and the death or the punishment for false witness is death. So they see them as false witnesses, therefore they need to be put to death. But in fact, they are the ones guilty of such a thing, not bearing a proper witness concerning Yahweh. Therefore, when this happens, Yahweh comes down and his presence is there, and things get real. The situation turns very dire for the people, for Yahweh comes down and he is so frustrated. How long will I deal with these people who despise me? How long will they not trust me despite everything that I've done? You know what? Forget this. I'm going to strike them with a plague. I'm going to destroy them. And then he looks at Moses, says, Moses, I will start over with you. I will make you into a greater and mightier nation than they are. Now, of course, it's the second time this has happened, going back to Exodus chapter 32 with the golden calf incident. Yahweh there said, hey, I'm gonna just wipe them all out. I'm gonna start over with you, Moses. But just as Moses interceded for the people in that moment, he does the same thing here. He says, Lord, if you do that, the enemies are going to hear about it and you're going to be maligned for it. That's going to give you a bad look, and your name should only ever be glorified. Your name should never be maligned. So now, Lord, may my Lord's power be magnified just as you have spoken. You are slow to anger and abounding in faithful love, forgiving iniquity and rebellion. I know that you're not going to leave the guilty unpunished, but you are a gracious God. So he begs him to pardon the iniquity of the people. Do not wipe them out. It is interesting that God at times shows extreme patience with the people, and at times shows, I don't want to say a lack of patience, but he doesn't have as much leash for them to run on. And it seems that as we progress in the story, that leash becomes shorter and shorter, because they should be even more convinced of God's ability to be faithful to his promises at this point. That seems to be why he's ready to just be done with them, because they're not listening and they know better. They saw the Exodus plagues. They saw the parting of the sea. They saw the events at Sinai. They've seen all these things, and yet still they show a lack of faithfulness. And yet God's faithfulness endures. His faithfulness endures, his mercy, his grace, his long suffering, his faithful love endure. And he says, you know what? You're right. I will allow the nation to go on. But those who have participated in this, those who have tested me, those who did not obey me, those who despise me, they will not see this land. They will not see this land. Those spies, they're done. Only Caleb and Joshua will continue on. Why? Because Caleb has a different spirit and has remained loyal to me. We talked about that a bit last night in our invitation. But with the enemy before us, and with y'all saying that you don't think we can do it, fine, we're not going to do it. Turn back around, we're going the other direction. He speaks to Moses and Aaron again, Yahweh does. How long must I endure the evil community, the complaining, all of this? Here's the punishment. Because of what you have done, you're going back into the wilderness and you are going to wander. You're going to get what you complained about. You complained in order to turn around. I'm going to let you turn around. You complained about being slaughtered in this land. You know what? You are going to be slaughtered, but in the wilderness instead. You know, you said that your children were going to be devoured. You know, actually, no. They're not going to be devoured. They're going to survive this, and they're going to go into the promised land and enjoy it. So many of the complaints are reversed, or they come true in a very ironic way. And again, Yahweh is able to do that. So for 40 years, they're going to wander in the wilderness, 1 year for each of the days in which they were on their scouting mission. So the men Moses sent to scout out the land, who returned and incited the community. They complained. They gave a negative report. Those specific men were struck down by Yahweh. Only Caleb and Joshua remained. So these complaints that took place in chapter 13, They were not without consequence. In fact, the greatest consequence. It cost not only the scouts their lives, but the entire community of Israel. What is it, 20 and above? They were going to drop in the wilderness. They were not going to see the promised land. And how sad of reality that is. Now, unfortunately, to close out the chapter, they just compound the issues. They compound the mistakes. They hear the consequence of their actions. Like, okay, we take it back. We take it back. We'll go into the land right now. We can do this. And Moses says it's too late. It's too late. You didn't listen to Yahweh's commands earlier, and you're going to do the exact same thing right now again. You are going to make the same mistake. You're not going to listen to him again, and it's going to get you in trouble. You will be defeated. The Amalekites, the Canaanites that are in front of you, they will take you down if you try to go up right now. Yahweh won't be with you because you've turned away from following him. And unfortunately, they don't listen again. They don't listen, so they try to go up into the hill country, even though the ark and Moses, two signs of Yahweh's presence, are not with them. And guess what? They get their tails handed to them. They are horribly defeated. And it's just another example of them not just taking their medicine, learning and making better decisions moving forward. They compounded the mistakes. So for the mistakes here in chapter 14, for the mistakes back in chapter 13, for the mistakes in the previous chapters as well, chapter 15 is going to be a reminder of some very important instructions that they needed to hear concerning offerings, Sabbath violations, and then there's a little section at the end about remembrance. That's what we're going to talk about tomorrow as we continue through the text of Numbers. If you have any questions or comments about this text here in chapter 14, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. Love to have a discussion with you about that. Again, thanks for taking the time to read along with me today. Hope you have a great rest of your Thursday, and we will be back at it tomorrow, reading together in Numbers chapter 15. Take care, and God bless.